I really think that 2024 was the fall of Hollywood.
I think the biggest one for me was the election results. And not just Trump winning, but Trump winning the entire fucking country.
I'm Stephanie Keith.
And I am Tara Manjekovic. And we are unapologetically outspoken.
Hey everyone, happy Monday. Now Tara has the sickness that I had. Everyone in my family is sick too. It's just like it's everywhere. People are talking about it all over TikTok. Like the whole world has it.
Yeah,
And people are like, there's people speculating, is it the bird flu? And I'm like, see, this is how it started with COVID. It started in like December, and then by March, we were shut down. So
yeah, I know.
I hope
Everybody's
you
sick.
get better soon.
I hope so too. Um,
Just
I just,
just to forewarn you, it lasts a good like 2 weeks before you start feeling normal.
oh, I know because my husband's been sick this entire time, and I'm like, oh, I'm not getting sick. I'm good. And then it came out of literally nowhere. Just one day I was feeling okay, and the next day was like full blown sinus, cough, the whole thing. And so I'm just sucking down the vitamin C and the zinc and just trying to survive.
Just get through it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's terrible. All
So
right. Well,
sorry for my voice, everybody.
you actually don't sound that bad. You sound better than I did, that's for sure. But since it's the end of the year, we thought it would be fun to do a roundup of all the crazy shit that happened in 2024. And okay, this is one of the reasons why I love the podcast because I was looking through all of our episodes, like starting in January of 2024. And I was like reliving like all the things we talked about. And it was just like, I don't know, it's cool that we have it documented and we can just go through it and kind of remember like our state of mind at that time because holy shit, like what a change in my state of mind from this time last year till now.
Yeah.
So, the first thing that I want to bring up is in January of 2024, that was when we talked about that weird incident at the Miami Mall where people were claiming that they saw aliens. And like, remember at the time, it just seemed so outrageous. And like, we were like, this is so stupid. And yet, look at how much has happened with aliens and UAPs ever
It's also,
since then.
but it's also crazy to think that was January because I
Yeah,
feel like that wasn't a year ago, but it was.
right. I know. It's wild. And like, ever since then, I feel like it's just been ramping up. And of course, my theory is still Project Bluebeam or something similar. But we had the UAP hearings with Congress. There's been what, like three of them now, where they had whistleblowers that have come out and said, yes, absolutely, aliens exist. Our government knows about it. They've been hiding it for decades. And now we have like these orbs and drones everywhere. And it's like now where we're sitting at, UFOs and aliens are just normal. It's just normal talk. And like nobody really seems to care. People just shrug their shoulders, like, yeah, drones, orbs. Like it's no big deal. I mean, it's crazy how far we've come in that arena. But I realized something kind of like terrifying when I was going through our episodes. So on January 31st, we did an episode on stealth camouflage technology for drones and missiles in the form of a plasma based energy field. And I was like, holy shit, like I had completely forgotten that we did that. And I'm thinking, okay, what are the odds that they were doing this with drones and plasma energy fields? And now we have drones and these plasma looking orbs everywhere. Could that be the reason that we're seeing all this stuff? Like maybe it's supposed to be they're testing out this camouflage for drones, and that's why we're seeing these like orb looking things that all of a sudden shapeshift and turn into a drone.
Yeah, it's funny because when we started talking about all this stuff, I felt like it was mostly from this like conspiracy theory perspective, right? Like the episodes were fun, but it did seem kind of far-fetched and unrealistic. And like, look at where we are now. Like,
Yeah.
it's just crazy.
How far have we come with conspiracy theories? It's like
Right.
at that time, people were still kind of rolling their eyes and like calling people conspiracy theorists because I remember I had met like one of my friends now, we had met about a year ago, and we were both conspiracy theorists. And it's like, oh my gosh, there's another person that thinks like me. Now I feel like everyone's a conspiracy theorist because everyone's seen so many things over the last year where it's like conspiracies are just truth that comes out, in the form of like a 6 month span or whatever. And that's kind of how I feel right now with all this drone stuff. Um, so it's just pretty crazy. And then I didn't forget about it, but I've completely put out the whole Epstein thing.
Mhm.
And, in January, we were talking about the Epstein documents and how the client list is going to be released. And still to this day, not one name has been released. Not one name. How crazy is that? And so, now with Trump coming in office, both him and Elon Musk have said that they're going to unseal the documents and that the client list will be released. And I really hope they keep their word. So we'll see what happens. But now we have this whole like additional scandal with the Diddy parties and Hollywood and the music industry. And I was thinking about it and I'm like, I really think that 2024 was the fall of Hollywood. I mean,
Yeah.
it's been happening like very slowly since 2020. But in 2024, that is where I have noticed a drastic shift on social media where you had like the Met Gala towards the beginning of the year. That's when people started blocking celebrities and it became this whole movement because people are just sick of watching and admiring these rich, out of touch celebrities. And we did a few episodes actually that were titled, like this one was titled, Is the Taylor Swift Effect Enough to Sway an Election? Because at that time, like celebrities were swaying people's opinions. But now where we're at, like looking back, we've come so far because I think that Taylor Swift and all the celebrities that supported Kamala are regretting it big time because I think it hurt them. And they're seeing that now. It definitely didn't help Kamala. And it's like, I think this truly is the year that Hollywood is crumbling.
Yeah, I think that's actually one of my favorite things about 2024 is watching this process of Hollywood falling apart. And I say that from the perspective of having worked in Hollywood. Um, God, it was maybe 10 years I was working in Hollywood right out of college. And it wasn't even as fucked up as it is now. But even at the time, the power and influence that Hollywood had and celebrities had in swaying politics, like it was huge. And to see that that's falling apart and just like watching the meltdowns has been beyond entertaining for me.
Yeah, I know. And well, you're in the Czech Republic, so I don't know if you have, but I have not been to the movies in months. And we went over Christmas to do like they had the Polar Express playing for free or whatever. So we went to the movies. It is so different now from what it was. Like there were no employees. You buy your tickets online, you buy popcorn online, and then there's like a self-serve like kiosk to get your popcorn, your drinks, everything.
Wow.
Which is just so different. And it was pretty much empty. Even with a free movie playing, the theater was empty.
Okay, it's funny you mentioned that because I had not been to a movie at the theater for over 7 years. I think almost 8 years.
Oh,
Since
wow.
leaving California, I had not been to the movie theater. Never went once when I lived in Washington, never went when I lived in Texas. My husband and I went to the movies like 2 weeks ago, and we went to watch the Gladiator movie because it's hard to even find something here that's in English.
Hmm.
But sometimes they have movies that are audio is in English and then um, subtitles in Czech instead of being dubbed in Czech. And this was one of those movies. And the theater experience was so bizarre for me. And I don't know if they do this in the States because, again, I haven't been there in so long. but you had to buy your tickets online beforehand and reserve your seat. So you didn't
Yeah.
just buy tickets, you bought seats. And then it was a cool theater because it was kind of a smaller theater and it was much more roomy than I remember movie theaters being, but it was more like a actual theater performance environment than a movie theater. And we did have human interaction with buying the popcorn and stuff like that. But it's just funny because I that's the first time I've been to the theater in so long and it was so different from what I remember.
Yeah, that's how it is here too, where you have to reserve your seat and they have like the big, recliner seats and everything else. But I was just thinking, like, how are they making money for these movies? Because I mean, we're talking like they spend hundreds of millions of dollars making these movies. And so much of that's supposed to come from ticket sales. And
Right.
I mean, theaters are empty. A lot of theaters have shut down. And then you have, I think it was also in 2024, maybe a little bit earlier, but that Angel Studios, that's
Mm-hmm.
become a big thing. They have a new movie out. Um, God, I can't remember. I think it's called Homestead, and it's kind of like about preppers and like the end of the world. And I mean, it's like a hit at the box office. So it's like those types of movies I feel like are emerging, and the stuff we're used to is kind of like going away. It's like people are not interested anymore.
I do have to tell you though, because I remember when you went to see the Barbie movie, and I was like, there's no fucking way I'm gonna watch that. That's like
Hmm.
you're probably ruining Barbie for me. But you said it was actually pretty good and it wasn't totally woke. And so it came on Netflix. And I don't know if it's been on Netflix in America for a while, but it just got here a couple weeks ago. And so I watched it and I was very pleasantly surprised. And I thought it was a fun movie. And it wasn't like, it was very like, you know, female oriented, women power kind of thing, but it wasn't that woke agenda of women. And I actually thought it was a good movie. So I wanted to say thank you for suggesting that I watch it.
Yeah, I was really surprised because I thought for sure it's going to be woke. And I think that's one of the reasons these movies and celebrities are done. It's like people are sick and tired of being lectured about being woke.
Yeah.
And yeah, that movie, I thought they did a great job. Like, yeah, female empowerment, but not in like a bad way or like going over the top. So that was like the last movie where I really saw people get excited about it. And there
Mhm.
was, there were people showing up to the theater. It's been pretty dead since then. Um, But yeah, so the other thing that I thought was so interesting is the beginning of last year, we did quite a few episodes on Europe, especially Germany, and the
Mhm.
farmers protesting. And like now, fast forward to today, and the German government and economy are collapsing. I think they're holding snap elections any day now. And it's just interesting. And I couldn't help but think, is that where we would be in the United States in 2025 if Kamala would have won?
Oh, no doubt. Like you look at Germany, France, Italy, all the shit that's going on in Europe right now. And like, remember how many episodes we did talking about BRICS and the potential collapse of the US dollar? And I feel like we were absolutely headed in that direction until Trump was elected. Like, our economy was turning to shit. We were completely losing credibility on the world stage. And I believe that if Kamala had won, BRICS would be gaining more power, our dollar would be totally devalued. But instead, like Trump's not even in office yet, and already BRICS is losing momentum and our dollar's back up. And
I
that's so
know.
huge.
It's crazy, like how much has shifted in a relatively short amount of time when you think about it. And it's interesting. I caught a clip from the Redacted podcast where they were interviewing someone in the German political, like conservative political party. And she was kind of walking them through what's happened. And I mean, it mirrors what was happening here, where the left got in power and they just kept going and going full steam, more and more extreme. And now the country's collapsing. And so it's like, I think this is a big wake up call to everyone. Like, this is what happens when, you let the left like be in charge and go to the extreme. And I really think it's going to be a turning point moving forward. Um, And then the other thing that I totally forgot about was when Tucker Carlson did his interview with Putin in the beginning of 2024. And I mean, all of the episodes that we did about World War III, like we're right on the verge of World War III. I am so like happy, but also completely shocked. It never happened. All the stuff that they pulled and every move they made to try and push and push and push to start World War III. And we are not in World War III, knock on wood. And it's like between, Ukraine and Russia, but then Israel and Iran and everything in between. I'm so thankful. I am so, so, so thankful that it never broke out like we thought so many
Mhm.
times throughout the year.
Yeah, and not to be, the doomsday person, but we do still have a few more weeks until Trump's in office. But it does totally look like we will avoid World War III. And you mentioned that interview that Tucker did with Putin, and that really opened my eyes because that was the first time, and honestly, I think the only time I can recall that we got to hear from Putin firsthand and get his perspective. And it still blows my fucking mind that the entire 4 years Biden has been in office, he has not once spoken with Putin. He hasn't made a phone call. He hasn't visited. He hasn't done a fucking thing. And it just speaks volumes to me when you look at the censorship of whatever the truth is, which we really don't know. We honestly don't know. That the closest thing we have to the truth was the interview that Tucker did with Putin. And
Yeah.
other than that, we have no fucking clue because we only hear the narrative that our government wants us to know. And every single time I just come back to the same thing of like, how can you preach anything to your people, the people of your country, when you're not even willing to engage in dialogue with the leader of the country that you are trying to get us into war with?
Well, yeah. And I think that just speaks volumes to the mindset of whoever, I don't even want to say Biden, whoever was controlling Biden. It's like they want war. They want, they don't want to talk because then that opens the door for negotiations and things like that. Right.
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
so, it's just like when Trump took over from Obama, and Obama told Trump he never talked to Kim Jong-un in
Right.
North Korea. It's like, are you kidding me? And so I think that's another reason why I have so much like faith moving forward because Trump will just pick up the phone or go fly there and like actually talk to them one on one. So I feel like if we can just get through the next few weeks, he will keep his word and end whatever war is looming. Okay, then we did an episode in February called Biden's Dementia Dilemma, Conspiracy or Perfect Storm for the Left. And I had to laugh because, I mean, my God, you say that Biden has dementia and you were a full-blown conspiracy theorist. I mean, he was doing cartwheels, in the background, and he was just this young spring chicken. And it's just hilarious looking now at like how it all played out and completely backfired on the Democrats. And I think this is where I was just looking at it and I'm like, I cannot believe that Trump won in a landslide because the way they were portraying it, during those episodes, I felt like so hopeless at that
Mm-hmm.
time. I truly thought no matter what, he's not going to win because they're going to rig it. And I have never been so glad to be wrong. I'm just shocked how it played out.
No, I'm with you 100% because I remember feeling so hopeless after we would record some of our episodes. And we talked about this on the podcast and, offline to each other, like that feeling of being so conflicted because, we look at this podcast, especially when we started it, as like a duty and an obligation to speak our truth, right? And we wanted to keep it going and talk about everything that was happening. And at the same time, we were both struggling with this desire to like just block it all out and live in ignorance, you know? And it was such a vibe mind fuck, especially when you're trying to stay positive and you're into manifestation and all this shit. And then you're focused on this negativity all the time. But I'm so glad that we kept it going, even when we were getting shadow banned and censored. And because it did feel completely hopeless and fruitless a lot of the time. And it would have been so easy to just give up and say, like, fuck it, you know? But we continued to put ourselves out there and speak our truth and have these conversations. And, you know, especially because we're like little fish in a big pond, you know? We could disappear and, like, is it going to have a huge impact on the world? No. But at the same time, I do feel that we made a difference and we made an impact and we didn't let that hopelessness that we felt keep us from moving forward. And maybe this sounds silly, but I think watching everything unfold that was being thrown at Trump and seeing him never give up and never stop fighting, like that really inspired me on this podcast to keep it going and keep fighting.
Yeah, I know. There were so many times I feel so bad looking back where I like almost gave up. Like I was telling you, like, man, my mental health, my mindset is just terrible because I felt so helpless. Like no matter what we do, it's not making a difference. And they're not going to let him get in. And it felt like insurmountable. And this all made me think of something I didn't even tell you about, Tara. Like I cannot believe I kept meaning to tell you about this. Totally forgot about it. Okay. So around that time, this girl reaches out to me on TikTok. Her name is Alanis. So shout out to Alanis. She listens to the podcast. She's young. And at the time she had reached out to me and she was like, I like everything you're saying, but here's my dilemma. She brought up the whole abortion thing. And she was like, God forbid something terrible happens and like I'm raped and I get pregnant. I want to be able to have the option, to have an abortion and like Trump's gonna ban it and like da da da. So I just gave her the facts. I was like, look, I know that's what you think, but that's not what's gonna happen. Even in states where it's like quote unquote banned, it's still they have exceptions for like rape, things like that. So I explained the whole thing and we talked a little bit and then I hadn't heard from her. She messaged me and she said, Hi, I just want to message you and tell you how much I appreciate you educating me when I needed it most. That same day I contacted you, I also contacted another creator that was Democratic, and your kindness and willing to share your knowledge with me versus the rude response I received from the other side was a huge sign of who I should be voting for. Since that day, I constantly searched for the truth, never took the media at face value, and your account completely changed my view on everything. I have fallen into my faith more than I ever have before, and my first year of voting, I voted red and for the betterment of the country. Thank you so much. We did it.
Oh
And
my
I was like,
God.
we made a difference. Like, we
Wow.
made a difference,
That's
And
awesome.
yeah, so it's like that just made me so happy that, here's someone that was looking for answers and we were able to help.
Yeah.
And man, how things have shifted. It's crazy.
And I love that she reached back out to you and said that because
Yeah.
that is the kind of stuff that inspires us to keep going.
Yeah, exactly. It's amazing how like one person out there that's
Mhm.
listening can just completely like shift your mindset and keep you going because I don't know if people realize when you don't see who's out there listening, sometimes you think like, is anyone out there? You know what I mean? And it's just nice to like interact with people that are. Um, so we did an episode in March with my teenage daughter where we questioned whether America's youth was as woke as the media made it seem. And man, once again, we were way ahead of the media because now you see how Trump was up 34 points with youth. It's like we were right. We sensed something. We talked about it, even though the media and all these ads and campaigns made it seem like every young person was woke. We were like, nope, there is something shifting. And I just want to be like, we were right. They were wrong.
Yeah, and I think it was also March when, remember, all that evidence came out that Google had been interfering in elections for like 16 years,
Yes.
and how the MSM, like, they basically influenced creating Trump derangement syndrome.
Yeah. Yep. It is true. And it's like, yep, the truth eventually comes out
Hmm.
and is no longer a conspiracy theory. And then, okay, you're going to love this because it was April when we did an episode about the bird flu, and you made the prediction that the bird flu was going to be the next pandemic. And here we are. I
Yes.
mean, it's like unfolding just like you said it would.
This is one that, like, I am so crazy about. And I know a lot of our listeners probably were like, oh my God, is she going to stop talking about the bird flu? And it didn't seem like a big deal, right? And it would kind of fall off the radar. But I think because I had been researching it so much, then you start getting info on your feed. And so I would get all these updates. And it was mutating and spreading. And I look back at I went through and I looked at our past episodes, and I'm like, yeah, I never let it go. Like, I just kept talking about it. I'd give random updates like basically every month since April. And surprise, surprise, right as we're transitioning to a new president, it's, following the path of COVID, and it's ramping up with the media talking about how the virus is mutating. And this is like, I'm not going to go off on a whole bird flu tangent again, but I will update you guys on one thing, which is now health experts are talking about this, seasonal flu. Like, maybe that's what you and I have, Stephanie, the seasonal flu that everyone has, right? Well, they're talking about now that combining with the bird flu, and the virus is swapping gene segments to allow the bird flu to spread more rapidly and become even more infectious. And virologists are saying we're totally screwed because this has a potential to turn into a full-blown pandemic in the United States. So yes, I think my prediction is correct.
It is just like how COVID played out. Yeah, you're
Right.
absolutely correct. 100%. And it's funny because now on TikTok, like I haven't heard a peep about the bird flu. Now all of a sudden, everyone's talking about the bird flu because everyone's sick with like these wild, people are getting all sorts of crazy diagnosis for like different respiratory things. And everyone's like, is this the
Mhm.
bird flu? And Fox News actually played a clip of Fauci back in like 2020. And it just sounds so absurd listening to it now, but he was saying how it absolutely could not have come from a lab and how it looks, like it did mutate from this whatever animal and then jumped over to our species. And just like listening to the whole thing, it was just showing how crazy it all was and how he purposely lied to the people. And here they're doing it again, but I don't think people are going to fall for it as easily.
I really hope not. And it's like, I think that obviously we've talked about how, COVID was an eye opener for a lot of people. But another thing that I think really started waking people up was all of the Trump trials. And like, this kind of like started spreading like wildfire. I think it was in May, like when all of the corruption started coming to light with the Trump trials, and people were, waking up even more to the hypocrisy of the left, and, the Biden admin's push for the, quote, democracy narrative, when everything that they were trying to do to Trump was completely undemocratic and frankly illegal and unconstitutional. And so I
Yep.
think this was a really big eye-opening thing for a lot of people.
Yeah, for me, it was definitely when I started noticing a huge shift because it was in the New York trial where we started seeing crowds and crowds of people
Mhm.
in New York City, blue New York City, that were there supporting Trump. And you started seeing people like protesting in favor of Trump. And that's when I was like, yeah, this is not just a Florida thing or a Texas thing.
Right.
Everyone everywhere is paying attention and starting to see the truth. And it's like, I'm still pissed that they went after him, but at the same time, if they hadn't, I don't know that it would have been so apparent of
Yeah,
what's really happening behind the scenes.
no, I agree with you. And it was kind of like with all of these trials, they were trying to prohibit him from campaigning. And he would leave court and he'd get on a fucking plane and he would fly to the next destination and campaign. And it's like America got to see this man that was out there doing everything possible in the middle of the left trying to ruin and destroy him. And
Yeah.
I think that that really woke a lot of people up.
Especially when Biden, couldn't even find his way off of a
Oh
stage
God, I know.
and never showed up for anything. It really showed clearly who is up for the job and who isn't.
Yeah. Okay, I think we're like what, almost halfway through the year. So June was when we finally got banned on TikTok. And that was what we were talking about, weather manipulation. And I remember being so just like confused because we've been shit talking the Biden admin for the past couple years, right? And saying things that I would think would get us banned that don't, but then we mention cloud seeding and we get banned. Like it
Yep.
was crazy. And then I think this was also when we did the episode on Project 2025 and all of the leftist podcast trolls started leaving us negative reviews and talking shit. Remember that?
Yep. Oh, yeah. The Project 2025. It did get a lot of people tuning in, but it got a lot of people on the left tuning in and they didn't like
Yeah.
it. They didn't like what we had to
No,
say.
I know. And then that for me was like also a turning point because in June was when we started really deep diving into the military industrial complex. And I remember like listening to some of Tucker's interviews, and I would listen to the interview and then it would do this research and then we would talk about all this stuff. And I remember feeling like so overwhelmed and like surprised when I finally understood how powerful they are and how the United States has had a hand in creating all of these major global conflicts, and like everything comes down to the military industrial complex and control. And for me, I don't know about you, but it was something that, I mean, I knew they were there and I knew they were powerful, but not to the extent that was revealed this year.
I agree. I agree. I feel like it gave us a lot of answers to the questions we had because we always knew that there were puppets controlling, Biden and a lot of people, but it was kind of this mystery of like, is it the World Economic Forum? Is it just the rich elites? And I think with everything we've seen, it all ties into that military industrial complex. And we still don't know who the players are within that. We probably never will. They're probably not people we would recognize, but I feel like at least it gives me something to hold
Yeah.
on to of like who is behind the scenes doing all this crazy shit.
Yeah. And then June was also when the left finally turned on Biden and admitted to his cognitive decline. And it was after the disastrous debate performance that he had with Trump. And like, remember how quickly the narrative shifted? We were talking about how,
Overnight.
yeah, it was overnight and how it was clearly planned because the minute the interview or the debate was over, these articles started coming out from the MSM. And it was just such clarity for how the narrative is controlled.
Yeah, because we were like, there's no way that these people who have been covering for him for years are now
Mhm.
all of a sudden going to flip on a dime. Like they were
Right.
told to flip. And yeah, it shifted so fast. And they were just acting like, oh, we're just now seeing this. Like this
Right.
wasn't happening for months. We weren't gaslighting you. It just, the debate is what really showed us. And it's like, are you kidding me? But yeah, so the summer was crazy because then we went into July where there was Trump's first assassination attempt, which my God, I will remember that forever, like the whole thing unfolding. And then it was later in the month when Biden, dropped out of the race or there was a coup, however you want to look at it. And I am telling you, I truly feel that we experienced a timeline shift. I think that was a fork in the road where everything changed and we shifted from this path that all year we sensed that we were on. and this new path opened up because it was like after his assassination attempt, things again like instantly changed.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to think, but that is when Elon Musk first came out and endorsed Trump. Like
Right.
he was Democrat before that, and that was just a few months ago. And it's like it feels like they've been working together forever, but it's really only been a few months. And that's when all of a sudden I feel like the left started backing off of like the open border and DEI and the trans agenda. Not fully, but we started seeing them like realize and start shifting. And then all of a sudden, they're acting like Trump's policies were their policies. And I feel like online, that's where I noticed the biggest shift. The online presence changed, and all of a sudden, it was like pro Trump, and everyone was posting that photo of him with his fist in the air. And it all of a sudden became like okay to publicly show support for Trump.
Yeah, until Chameleon Kamala came on the scene,
Right.
right? Like, so it was what, July and August, basically, just wild because the left had, dropped Biden like a hot potato. They embraced Kamala with her whole vibe shift bullshit narrative, spent billions and billions of dollars on this elaborate hoax of pretending she was like a legally eligible candidate. And at the same time, this is when it's suddenly being questioned and revealed by the MSM that Biden is MIA. And then we see the FBI and the Secret Service being revealed to be completely inept with, the investigation into Trump's assassination attempt. And even the mainstream media starts questioning who's running the country. And I think this whole series of events, like combined with Trump's assassination attempt, was the push that the country really needed to start uniting everyone. And so I completely agree with you about the timeline shift.
Yeah, and it's interesting because he had gained so much like popularity and support after the assassination attempt. And I remember you and I talking about how they're not going to like this. They're going to want to do something drastic to shift the attention away from his assassination attempt.
Right.
And sure enough, they replaced Biden with Kamala, and it's this whole media frenzy, honeymoon type scenario. Just, and we, again, we called it. It's like we knew they were going to do something. However, it backfired in like the biggest way possible? And then September, there was the second assassination attempt at his golf course. So that was another big thing. Um,
Yeah, and they tried to totally downplay it, right? Because they were
oh yeah.
still on the Kamala campaign. And
Meanwhile, can I just point this out real quick? We have not heard a peep about that guy who
no.
the second assassination attempt or the first assassination attempt, nothing. Yet look at this Luigi Mangione that
Mhm.
killed the United or allegedly killed the United Healthcare. It's all the news is talking about. But
Right.
yet we still to this day have not heard anything else about these assassination attempt, suspects.
No, and we also aren't hearing anything about Kamala, who
Yeah.
was like literally the topic of the news for 3 months. And then as soon as the election, she fell off the face of the earth. But it was pretty funny because it was what, September, October, that we started basically having fun with making fun of Kamala and all of her different changing accents and her made up stories about her childhood and just the word salads that she would spew at all of her campaign events, how she never actually said what any of her policies were, how we knew absolutely nothing about her plans. And she was still being, touted as this media darling. And it was so obvious that she had no fucking clue what she was doing.
I gotta say, like, as annoying as it was watching her and her fake accents, and then KJP, like, throughout the year, just saying, let me be clear, and then, like, not saying anything at all. As annoying as it was very entertaining. Like, we
Yeah.
did have a lot of laughs over that.
Mhm.
And, it's like they gave us some good content to work with because it
Yeah.
was god awful. Yeah, and then we go into the fall, right? And October was when Hurricane Helene and then Hurricane Milton. I think Helene might have been the end of September, but both of those hurricanes happened back to back. And again, like another thing that the news should be talking about every day, but they're not, is that still to this day, there are Hurricane Helene victims that are in need of help, that are like living in a tent in freezing temperatures. Everything is gone. They lost their house, their belongings, everything. And the only people helping are civilians and veterans.
Yeah.
And I mean, we still have not gotten an updated death toll. Like, remember, they kept saying, "Oh, it's 100." It was like right around 100, just like in Maui. It was always
Mhm.
100. And still to this day, we don't know. We have no idea with Maui, and we have no idea in North Carolina what it was. We do know, though, that in North Carolina, it had to be thousands because entire towns were decimated, were wiped out, but no one's talking about it. It's like the media has just long forgotten about this, and there's still people in need of a lot of help. And it's really sad.
Well, it was just kind of like how they completely conveniently forgot about the East Palestine train derailment. And that was over a year and a half ago. And that's still a regulatory cleanup nightmare that has forever changed the lives of the people there. So, I mean, our media quickly forgets anything that doesn't go along with the narrative.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like one day in the future, we're going to be hearing about the people of East Palestine and health complications and
Right.
things that all of a sudden are going to start happening down the road.
Yeah. And then, so obviously, November, the highlight was the election and like the joy of watching the left go into this complete meltdown. And since then, it's just been kind of this waiting game, to see how much damage and destruction the Biden admin can continue to pull off until Trump takes office.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was the biggest political comeback in history is what they're
Yeah.
saying. And
Mhm.
I agree. And just looking at the year overall, I mean, again, I feel like this year there was like a shift. Like we were headed in one direction. And, Trump talks a lot about how like God intervened, like something happened where we were shifted. And thank God, because I just feel like for the first time in the whole year, I feel hopeful. Like things are going to be okay. And so I was looking at the whole year and I'm like, if I had to pick the top three craziest things in 2024, it was Trump's assassination attempt. Like that was this big fork in the road timeline shift. What happened in North Carolina with Hurricane Helene? I still do not think there was anything natural about that.
Yeah.
And then the coup, where they replaced Biden with Cackle's Kamala, and the ridiculous media campaign psyop, where they attempted to trick everyone into thinking she was popular. And
Mhm.
now they have to try to explain what went wrong. Where did the $1 billion go? Why did she lose so horribly? So I think like all three of those things were kind of these like forks in the road where it drastically changed and a lot of people woke up to the nonsense that were still asleep.
Yeah.
So what's your three crazy stories?
Okay, I'm going to try to get through this without coughing, but I think the biggest one for me was the election results. And not just Trump winning, but Trump winning the entire fucking country. And we kept saying he's too big to rig, he's too big to rig. But at the same time, watching how the left used their power to basically turn our country on its head in less than 4 years and all the shit that they tried to do to take down Trump, it just showed that they would stop at nothing to keep him from getting back into office. And it's no secret, I still don't trust the elites or the left to actually allow a peaceful transition of power, but that remains to be seen. But looking at past evidence of like, there was some substantial election interference by the left. Like, it's known now, the evidence has come out. And I figured something shady has to take place at the last minute. Like when Biden mysteriously got more votes than any president in history at 3 a.m. after the polls were closed. And then we all woke up the next morning in November of 2020 to see he was going to be the next president. Like, I still think that was a stolen election. And then when we had the 2023 midterms and everyone kept predicting this red wave, right? the red wave, but it didn't happen. And so that also made me lose hope. So I doubted that Trump would actually be allowed to win this election. And it completely renewed my faith in humanity that so many people rallied for him, and that every time the left tried to destroy him with these frivolous lawsuits and the assassination attempts and the hateful rhetoric comparing him to Hitler and the outright lies, it only made people support him more. And even people who don't love Trump, they woke up to the fact that he was the best choice for our country. So when I saw the news stories that, like, not only did he win the election, but he swept the entire fucking country, that was the best moment of the year for me. And it made me feel so proud to be an American.
Yeah, and I feel like it vindicated what everyone was saying, everyone that thought there was election interference in
Mhm.
2020, because then we were able to look at every election over the past, what, like decade, 2 decades, and how many people voted. And you could see this complete outlier with Biden in
Right.
2020. And it was like, yeah, okay, that is a statistical anomaly. And I think it just verified, okay, we're not all crazy. Something shady happened there. And I absolutely think it happened with the midterms as well. And now it's coming out that the US Census data was faulty. Like it was swayed so that places like California would have more Congress people than places like Florida. And
Right.
so hopefully that's rectified under Trump's administration. But yeah, crazy.
Yeah, I hope so too. So, my second favorite crazy thing from this past year isn't a specific moment, but it was really just like the momentum of watching the leftist media narrative implode. And it's like the more they grasped at retaining power, the more they actually lost control. And this narrative was being shoved down our throats, right? But it ended up being their greatest downfall, because it was just like with how they tried to take down Trump. The more they censored and lied to the American people, the more people started to wake up and open their eyes. And it's like now nobody gives a shit about the MSM anymore. And it doesn't matter how much they try to backpedal or get on the Trump train now that he's about to take office. Like, we're awake to their lies. I don't think people are going to fall for their shit again. And if you look back on like all the compilation videos on social media and like the non woke media channels and podcasts where, people put together clips of these newscasters and reporters, and they all said the exact same thing, like they were given a script, and it didn't matter what state they were in. Every newscaster said the same thing. And I think it showed everyone that our media is nothing but government influenced propaganda puppets. And it's like, I'm not huge on social media. Like, I don't post a lot, but I think this year gave me a fresh perspective on the power of people being able to connect and exposing the truth and presenting different points of view on social media, because those were the places where people could go to talk about the things the government was trying to censor, and the government couldn't fucking control it. And, it's like the Twitter files happened back in 2023, and that's what started the ball rolling on exposing the leftist narrative. But then it completely unraveled over this past year. We watched Meta platforms lose traction because of censorship. We watched Elon completely transform Twitter into X and this incredible free speech platform. Even on TikTok, like, despite the bullshit the government's trying to pull with banning it, they couldn't control everything. And then you had people like Tucker Carlson and Joe Rogan doing these insane interviews that got millions of views and opened up so many people's eyes. And I thought it was just so powerful and inspiring to watch this shift of people boycotting the MSM and the elites and taking to social media platforms and podcasts to spread the truth.
Yeah, and I think it's exactly why they want to ban TikTok, because it's the one
Mhm.
platform they couldn't control. And I just saw Trump said that he reached out to the Supreme Court and he's encouraging them to hold off on
Oh,
making any
good.
decisions. So I think he's going to try to keep it around, and I think he should. I think it woke a lot of people up to things we weren't seeing on other platforms. And I also think, like you said, it was the year of podcasts. A lot of people started tuning into podcasts to hear firsthand, from these interviews rather than a 30-second clip on a mainstream news outlet. So huge shift there. And I think it's going to continue shifting that way.
Yeah, me too. And so I guess I would say my third favorite crazy thing that happened this year was when RFK Jr. dropped out of the race and joined forces with Trump, and they created the Unity Party, because this is unprecedented. It's something that we have never seen in our lifetime. You have a lifelong Democrat who comes from this long succession of famous Democrats with immense political power, and he leaves the party to join basically the wild card presidential candidate, and they form this whole new party. And yes, Trump ran under the Republican ticket, but it's not the Republican Party. He is not a traditional Republican. He's a patriot. So is RFK Jr., Elon Musk, Tulsi Gabbard, all of the prominent Democrats who left the Democrat Party to join forces with Trump and JD Vance. And it created this party, this brand new party that I hope will actually become a party of its own. And it's a party that's for the good of the country and not for the specific party or political gain. And this to me was like one of the most amazing things of this year, because it's something that's never happened before.
Yeah, it is pretty remarkable. And I feel like they need a rebrand because it's not the Republican Party or the conservatives of, our lifetime that we were always so used to. It's completely different. And it's like America first. It's patriots,
Yes.
like you said. And man, like we needed it. And I've never felt such a patriotic vibe,
Right.
I mean, since like 9/11. And so yeah, I'm excited. I feel very hopeful. I think things are going to be getting a lot better. They already are, and he's not even in office yet. So yeah, what a wild year.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you back here on Wednesday.
Yeah, well, happy New Year's
Oh
Eve, I
yeah.
guess. Like that's tomorrow. So
Yep.
happy end of 2024. Be safe and have fun, and we'll see you in 2025.